So welcome everybody to this global studies presentation, which is going to be featuring speakers from the Peace Corps who have served in this wonderful organization for many years. And today they're going to be sharing their experiences in various countries with us. And at the end, you'll be able to ask your questions. So we look forward to that. Before we get started, I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about the Global Studies Certificate Program, which we offer at Leeward Community College. This is an academic subject certificate that is designed to really increase awareness of the world amongst our students. It's designed to make them more sensitive to the international scene, more knowledgeable, more engaged about international affairs by having them take a series of courses in different areas. And being here in Hawaii, of course, we are at the center in many ways of the world, even though we're in the middle of the ocean. And we feel that it's very important for our students to know about life outside of Hawaii and to know about opportunities to travel, to learn, to study, and to work. So let's see. Without further ado, I am going to now turn to Shannon Lykudra, who is going to guide us through the rest of today's session. So Shannon, welcome. Thank you all for being with us, and we'll get started now.
Thank you so much, Suzette. My name is Shannon Lykudra. I am the regional recruiter for the Peace Corps based here in Hawaii. And I'm delighted to be here with you all today and to have 3 returned Peace Corps volunteers to share about their stories. And before we get started, I am going to share a little bit about the Peace Corps for those of you that might be interested in just the nitty-gritty of how to get into the Peace Corps, whereas our participants today are going to be sharing about their actual experience. So the Peace Corps is an independent agency of the federal government. We train and deploy volunteers and send them to over 60 countries around the world. Currently it's 64. Our volunteers go for 2 years and 3 months of service. They have 3 months of training followed by 2 years of service in a community. This is me. I am the recruiter for the state. It's me on Maui. It's a lovely sunset. More than 240,000 volunteers have served in the Peace Corps to date. The Peace Corps mission is to promote world peace and friendship. So the Peace Corps is really an intercultural exchange agency. What I mean by that is that we are sending volunteers to other parts of the world, oftentimes into communities that might have never met anyone from the United States outside of Hollywood. And then our volunteers are going to learn and live in a community and in a country, and they're going to bring that knowledge and awareness of that country back home after they serve. So it's really a way to experience another part of the world and make the world a little bit smaller in promoting that world peace and friendship. So I'd like to point out that the Peace Corps is collaborative and grassroots driven. And what that means is that host countries ask for the Peace Corps to come in. They say, we would like to have a particular we would like a school in this area and we would like to have 12 trained teachers, or we would like to work on a fish pond in this area and we would like some trained environmental volunteers. It goes from the host countries asking us, not the other way around, which I think is really important to note. We're not pushing ourselves on host countries. Host countries are instead asking for the Peace Corps to come in because they know that the expertise that our volunteers bring is really valuable. Also, you're going to build relationships that last a lifetime. I'm sure that our panelists will share that they are still in touch with many of the people that they lived and worked with during their time in the Peace Corps. I've known many volunteers that still go back to their host country time and time again throughout their lives. Also, it's an extremely difficult time in your life, very rewarding, but difficult. So you have to be adaptable and flexible and able to grow. And these are skills that are transferable for the rest of your life. And it could be an extremely transformative experience. Okay, so we have actually 3 main programs. We have a virtual service pilot, but that's not an official program yet. But we have 2 other programs, the Peace Corps Volunteer Program, which all of our panelists participated in today. This is a 2-year, 3-month program. And then we have a Peace Corps Response Program. For that program, it's a shorter program that is 3 to 12 months where you already have to have the language and the skills required to serve in that response program. For the Peace Corps Volunteer Program, we're going to teach you the language and the skills you need to be successful. So I want to draw your attention to that last bullet, which is that our volunteers range in age from 20 to 86. We do not have an upper age limit in the Peace Corps, so this is something that you could consider right now if you're attending community college. You could consider it right once you finish your bachelor's degree, or you could do it, in your 40s, in your 60s, later in life. There's no upper age limit, so it's really flexible for anyone who is interested in service abroad. We have 6 sector area concentrations. You do not have to have particular expertise to serve in these concentrations, except education. Most do require a degree. For the rest, we're going to give you the training and the skills. We do have people that tend to want to volunteer in a particular sector because that's where they did their degree or that's what they're most interested in. You have a primary project, which is decided by the Peace Corps, and then a secondary project, which is decided by you when you're in the field. Okay, this is a map showing some of the countries or all of the countries where we serve. Like I said, there's no language requirement for the Peace Corps. The only 3 requirements are that you are a U.S. citizen, you are over the age of 18, and you either have a bachelor's degree or 5 years of professional experience. For all of the countries that are blue and orange, we do not have a language requirement. Most of the green countries do require you to speak Spanish prior to service. There are some exceptions like Ecuador, Peru, Belize. You're not required to speak a language prior to service. Other than that, we have some of the best language training available in the world. It's 3 months of immersion training, and I'm sure our panelists will talk about that, where you're living with a host family and also receiving classroom training prior to the start of your actual service. Okay, so during service, you receive a living stipend, you receive housing, we take care of your travel to and from your country, we take care of your medical and your dental coverage. There's a possibility for student loan assistance, meaning if your loan provider allows it, you could have your loans deferred or forgiven. And then, of course, career skills and training, which makes us a really great choice for individuals that are just starting out in their career or just graduating college, because sometimes it's hard to get that initial experience, and Peace Corps allows you to get that experience. Safety and health is of the utmost importance to Peace Corps. We have 24/7 medical personnel, and all of our volunteers and individuals on the ground receive extensive training that is annually renewed. For the graduate school, we have agreements with over 100 universities that they, at a minimum, provide 25% tuition coverage for returned Peace Corps volunteers. Some provide much more. This is a lifetime benefit, so it's something that you can take advantage of directly after serving or years after serving. And I encourage you to check out our website to see which university partners we have and which specific programs. I'm going to be here for the rest of the time. Thanks so much, Suzette, for having us, and I'm going to pass it back to her.
Thank you, Shannon, for that wonderful introduction. Very helpful, very informative. So I am going to go ahead now and introduce our first speaker, KJ Peterson. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her incredible background. So KJ Peterson is a seasoned expert in international and domestic emergency management and military contingency planning, who is currently serving as branch chief in the Indo-Pacific Command's current operations division. She served the Peace Corps in Namibia, where she taught English, helped to build a library, and procured prosthetics for a student who had lost his legs. It was absolutely the hardest job I will ever do, she said, and I loved it deeply. So without further ado, KJ, a very warm welcome and aloha to you.
So hi, I'm KJ. This is a little bit of what Suzette just talked about, but I figured I would kind of go through my background and what led me to Peace Corps, and then my Peace Corps experience, a little bit of what was already mentioned, and then just kind of what I've been able to do since then and how that kind of shaped where I'm going and what I'm doing with my career and life now. So right out of high school, I mean, I think I've always had really a desire and a passion to serve and serve my communities and the U.S. government in some capacity. I was always interested in something along the lines of military or or police force or international aid. It was kind of all over the place. But I think I was first turned on to Peace Corps sometime in high school when I had a teacher that had done it, and I just absolutely loved her experience. But I kind of put it on the back burner. I ended up joining the Marine Corps right out of high school. So I was in the reserves, and I had an 8-year contract. So I served in logistics, and I did that because it was reserves. It was basically like a part-time job, like I'm sure a lot of people have experienced in other branches. But I was able to then also continue with my education. So I did go and get my bachelor's in political science and then international studies with a minor in Spanish at Western Washington University. And as I was there, I think I was continuing to explore, like, what am I interested in? It was something international, but I also found an interest in kind of conflict, like disaster management. Still couldn't make up my mind, but I encountered yet another professor who had done Peace Corps, remembered hearing about it, and thinking, like, this is probably something I have to do. So shortly after I graduated, I was able to work for a fabulous organization that I still hold near and dear called Mercy Corps. They do international development and humanitarian assistance. And that's where I really started to kind of solidify my career in terms of I want to do something in the humanitarian world somehow. And so this is really speaking to me. So I was starting to move away from kind of the military side of things because I wasn't really sure if I could explore that there. So while I was at Mercy Corps, I had a great opportunity to meet a lot of kind of the higher ups, like the division leads and the founders themselves. It was really awesome. And I talked to a lot of people. I said, how did you get where you are? Like, what do I do to prove to the organization, you know, that I can work abroad with you, that I can be a leader in this type of a field? And I can't tell you how many of them said that they had done the Peace Corps, or at least saw it as something that really field tested people before they went out and deployed with Mercy Corps for disaster response or took a post abroad. They wanted to see that you could be in a place for longer than just a study abroad, and kind of be in that discomfort of like adjusting to a new culture, kind of adjusting to a new language, like the longevity of you kind of being determined and willing to kind of sit through that adjustment, so that they knew they were making the right investment and that you kind of had it in you. So I think at that point it was solidified that that Peace Corps was my next move. And my immediate boss had also done Peace Corps in Micronesia. So there were so many things that kept telling me that I needed to do this. So while I was at Mercy Corps, I applied with my then partner at the time. So if there's any questions about serving with a partner, I did serve with my partner at the time. We've since separated, but amicably. So it took a little bit longer in the process because they have to find positions that are in a similar place. So it usually ends up being in maybe a slightly more developed town, but it's entirely kind of country dependent from what I understand. We were initially slated for Mexico. We got kind of an initial like soft offer, but then there was an adjustment and then we ended up with Namibia. So we were both very excited. I had been to Africa maybe once with a study abroad when I was in university, but it was only for about a month. So I was really excited to get back. And as Shannon was mentioning, you know, we got there. We had fantastic training. There was a dozen different languages that are spoken in Namibia. English is since their independence, English was chosen as their primary language. So those of us that were going to teach were mostly requested to teach English, or like my partner at the time was an engineer, so he ended up teaching math and sciences. And so that was pretty typical for what Namibia was requesting. But we got some phenomenal training from local staff there for not only the language, but also kind of how the educational system worked so that we could fit into that. I have I had never taught in a classroom in the United States. I'd done a lot of like ESL volunteering, helping people who were in the process of getting green cards, or it was just a second language, so kind of studying for different tests. But that was usually one-on-one. So I was feeling very out of my element when I was thrown into an elementary school classroom with 40 plus kids in each class. And every year I had about, I think it was at least like 200 students in total throughout the different classes that I had. So it was a lot of kids, a lot of challenges, but absolutely it was the best experience of my life. I think one of the historical sort of catchphrases for Peace Corps is that it's the hardest job you'll ever love. And I absolutely affirm that 5,000%. I always feel like I wasn't necessarily the best English teacher sometimes, because that's not my profession, but I definitely tried. But I definitely think I was an exceptional auntie and like mentor to my kids. And I really bonded with them. And still, as I think Shannon mentioned also, like I still keep in touch with them to this day. A lot of the teachers that I became friends with that were at my school, our host family, and even some of the kids that I taught, because everybody's on Facebook and Instagram these days. So a lot of them found me after my service. So that's been really awesome to keep in touch with them. And so not that anybody doesn't know where Namibia is, but it is in Southern Africa. So that's just a visual there. So these are just a couple of pictures from my service. Suzette mentioned already that I was able to work with another volunteer and build a library at my school. So you can see that in the top right picture there. So we coordinated with some local organizations. We ended up getting some better bookshelves than that later on, but we got I think it was 90% of the books donated from various organizations, both domestically and internationally. Some of our friends and family even sent books. So that was amazing. The middle picture there is me and some of my students. And then if you look at the bottom right, that's me and my partner, and then our host mother and our host sister. And then the bottom right is also another small project. There was a ton of secondary projects. So, I was a teacher. I helped build a library. Another one was there was another organization, Mother Bear, that donates crocheted teddy bears. So we were able to work with them to get little teddy bears donated for the entire kindergarten classes at our school. So it was really, really fun to explore all those secondary projects. And I think that was one of the best parts too. Like, I think a lot of aspects of Peace Corps, not only kind of adjusting to the cultural differences, the language differences, just the transportation differences, the physical differences, but also it taught you a lot of like resiliency and adaptability, creativity and determination in so many ways, because you didn't necessarily have the resources available to you that you were used to, either, just because of a cultural or structural difference, or, because a lot of us are obviously working in kind of less developed areas. So you really kind of had to work with what you had and work through networks and get creative. And so I think everything that I've done since then, like I've worked contingency planning and crisis planning. And I think a lot of that development of like finding what is plan B, what is plan C, what is plan D is a lot of what I do now, honestly. And so I really think that's where I started to develop those key skills. And it was really, really important. And then just a couple other pictures. I can run through also a number of secondary projects. If you look at the bottom right, that's McDonald's. Suzette mentioned that me and another volunteer were able to get some prosthetics donated. So he had an accident at the school a few years prior to my arrival, and he ended up having to have both legs amputated. So he is standing there on his own with prosthetics, and that was pretty amazing to do. The top right is also, we were able to organize an educational tour. So a lot of the students in Namibia generally didn't get out of their towns, maybe around the region, but not typically far, just because of, maybe It was too expensive, like they, didn't have anybody to take them, etc. So we were able to kind of work with different organizations to get some funding and get like discounts at some local like educational centers. And we did, I think, 2 or 3 different educational tours with with different kids each time, working with other volunteers around the country as well. It was like a volunteer organization, like a panel of other volunteers, other Peace Corps volunteers, and you kind of work together. And so we went to like a Wildcats Foundation one time. We were able to go to this place out in the desert that studied desert life. And there was a lot of different like projects we were able to do with the kids there. So that was really fun. The top left is just me and one of my friends and co-teachers in the yellow. And she was Herero, and so this is her like kind of their cultural dress. We got invited to a wedding, which was very special. So that was the weekend with them. And then bottom left is just me saying goodbye to my kids, and that was a very emotional moment. And I still feel like I'm getting like choked up when I think about it. And as mentioned, I still have a very close tie to my friend. Like Namibia is my second home. So the top right is what my host mother and sister look like now. So she's all grown up. And the bottom right is me and one of my teachers as well that I still keep in touch with. And then to the left, that's one of my learners, or they call them learners in Namibia, but this is one of my students. So he was much shorter than that when I left Namibia, but we've kept in touch. And I've also helped him and a couple other people get some scholarships. So he's graduated from university, and I'm so proud of him because that's not as common in Namibia. But so definitely absolutely love and appreciate being able to keep ties with my family back there. And then just to go back, as mentioned, kind of moving on after Peace Corps, I think it was every time I've gotten another job, people have been overly impressed and thinking and understood and appreciated how much you gain from Peace Corps and what that means. So I did end up getting a master's degree, and it was kind of a mixture of that sort of security background that I still had with military, but I also mix it with a humanitarian and refugee crises certificate. And then I was briefly with the Inspector General doing some work, but then I moved on to a job with USAID doing international disaster assistance. So I worked for them for 5 years, absolutely loved that job. The people that do that work and that I worked with are amazing professionals, and it's very, very critical work. And then after about 5 years, then I just continued kind of along a career path and figuring out what I wanted to do. And so that's where I ended up in my career now. So as mentioned, I lead the US INDOPACOM headquarters, basically domestic disaster response planning. So if there were to be any type of a disaster or crisis in Hawaii, Guam, CNMI, basically the US territories within our region, my team works with the rest of the military and then also FEMA and other local organizations to help with the response if needed. So again, really critical work, and it's still kind of in that vein. So I think I've taken up my time, but happy to answer questions later on. And I just can't say enough about Peace Corps, so happy to talk about it much more if needed. Thank you.
Okay, KJ, thank you. That is such an inspiring story, and we certainly are very touched by it. And I can imagine how much it touched the heartstrings when you had to leave. I could see it on your face. I could see it on the students' faces, on all the people that you got close to while you were there, and how wonderful to think that you were able to make such a great contribution in so many ways. Thank you for highlighting all of the secondary projects that you worked on in addition to teaching, because it gives us a nice overview of the kinds of work that you can be involved in and the rewards that come with them. So we will definitely come back to you at the end for a question and answer. So let me move on now to our second speaker. That's going to be Rick Davis, Welcome, Rick. Thank you very much for being part of the panel. Rick was raised in a small town in Kansas. He holds a BA in secondary and an MA in science education and has 50 years of experience as a teacher and administrator. He served with the Peace Corps in Botswana and Grenada and has also volunteered in American Samoa, Bangladesh, the US Pacific Islands, India, Nepal, Germany, Lebanon, China, Colorado, and Hawaii. Whew, it's quite a list. He says the Peace Corps, and I'm quoting now, was the most important and difficult decision I've made in my life, leading to a much deeper understanding of the world and the impact a person can have on others. So, welcome again, Rick, and thank you.
Aloha, everybody. I'm focused mainly on university students possibly thinking about Peace Corps in the future, or others on the listening in that are thinking about going overseas. And it really was a very, very hard decision. I'm from that small town that she talked about in Kansas, only 5,000 people. I really hadn't been away from Kansas until college. So it was a really big step. I was born in that small town. I went to kindergarten, high school, junior high, all there. I got my BA at the University of Northern Colorado and a master's in science education, both at the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley. But I wanted to get into Peace Corps out of high school. I tried to apply, and they said, "Are you a farmer? Are you a fisherman?" And I said, "No." I said, I want to be a teacher. And they said, "Go get your degree and come back to us." So I went off to university and got my BA degree. My first assignment, again, long before digital, and my first assignment was Botswana. I was there 3 years with Peace Corps, and I was assigned by Peace Corps and the government to a U.S. Methodist mission school that had just been built there. And many of my kids were from South Africa, and Namibia, and Southwest Africa, as they were Herero, as you saw in the previous presentation, as well as kids from the local area. It was a boarding school, so the kids boarded at the school, a few day students, but mostly in boarding school. And I taught high school biology and math for 3 years. And then I also, as my secondary job, and I have to apologize, I do not have many photos because it was way before digital photos existed, and I've lost most of my collection in a theft from a storage unit. So I don't have many photos left of my own time in Botswana. But on my first trip to my school in Maun, it was Maun Secondary School, I took it with a manager for a handicraft co-op that was run by the government. And she asked, "If I send you money, would you be able to buy handicrafts for me on the weekends and holidays?" And I said, "Sure, I would love to." And so on weekends and holidays, I was in the northwest of the country, end of a 300-mile dirt road. So it was really remote, really, really remote. And to tell you the truth, very scary. There was at one point where I'm not sure I can do this. Do I need to go home or do I stay? And again, part of that is I've taught in Hawaii for years, and I cannot tell you how many of my Hawaii students come back to Hawaii after their first year in college because the world out there is so different from here. And it's a big step, but if you can push yourself to take that step, it is so well worth it. That handicraft job led me into 2 years with the United Nations in the same place, setting up a formal purchasing and buying system along another 300 miles of dirt road beyond where I lived, and buying mostly basketry, but other handicrafts from the Herero tribe, from the Bushman tribes, as well as all of the tribes that did the basketry. And Botswana is right next to Namibia in Southern Africa. Knew nothing about it when I got there. All I knew was my Tarzan movies from my childhood, which was totally out of whack when I landed in Johannesburg, and there are high rises everywhere in Johannesburg. That's the first step to get into Botswana at the time, was via South Africa and Johannesburg. Botswana, I do want to tell you, the things I got out of both Peace Corps were both people and learning about how others lived and how other countries work. And it still blows my mind. I was almost in tears with the last presentation because it brought back so many memories. Cattle are the biggest industry in Botswana and have been for hundreds of years. And it's a protectorate. It never was a colony, but people value their bank is cattle, not money in the bank, not money in a new house. It's cattle and goats. How many cattle and goats do you have is a sign of wealth. That might include a truck which takes you out to where your cattle are, and a small hut or a house, nothing big, but the money is all invested in cattle that gets sold and exported as beef around the world. Game parks are the second big industry in the country. And fortunately, where I was 30 miles from one of the largest and best game reserves in all of Africa, Moremi Game Reserve, that the tribe set up long before the country was even formed. I taught out in Botswana, built by the Methodist Mission Church, and about half the faculty were missionaries, and there were 3 Peace Corps volunteers assigned to the school, as well as Botswana teachers who were assigned to the school by the government. I taught high school math, biology, and one of the most traditional things is the Kotla meeting, or the village meeting in the center of the village is a Kotla meeting where the women and the men all come together with the chief from the village or the district and make decisions that need to be made for the district and so forth. So that's a little bit about Botswana. The UN job, I want to mention the transition. I think I got it here. Yeah, a little bit about Botswana. My Peace Corps salary was $100, mainly for food and supplies. Rent was paid. I lived in a compound, a rondavel with the family, and there were 3 other huts and a tin roof shack that the mother and grandmother lived in, and then the children all lived in the mud huts. No electricity, no running water. I had an outdoor toilet, outhouse, and I had a little lean-to where I took showers in. My water came from a nearby river. I once tried to take a bucket down to the river to pick it up my own water, and my landlady was just furious with me. It was not, no, you have one of the kids go down and get the water for you. I was not supposed to be doing that. Anyway, the interesting thing about these drums is actually they had an axle on them, and they could be pulled up from the river up anywhere into the village by goats and dropped off at houses around the village. We were very lucky to have a river in the town we were in. No one else in the country had a flowing river like we did. My cooking was on a gas stove, like you see on the right. And again, long before digital, it was a cassette player back in the 70s. So it was a while ago. And some of you may not even know what a cassette player is. And so, but the handicraft part that I wanted to talk about led me to a UN job that was very, very interesting. My biology class, my daily activities were classes. I lived about a mile away from the school, so I had to go. If I had evening study hall duty, I had to walk back, which was scary, 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 because it was along the river and no lights and dark. And I always thought I was going to step on a puff adder or a snake on the way back home. So there were things I overcame, and that ability to adjust and be adaptable and make changes I could have had a house on the school campus, but it was a church campus and they were that curtains would part if I came in late in the evening, or it would just, I felt like I was being watched. So I moved into the village. Coaching was a big part of my work there. We had a girls volleyball team that I coached the 3 years I was there, and we actually won the national championship, which involved a 300-mile drive to the rail station, a 300-mile trip on the train to where the competition was, win the competition, and then the whole 600 miles back again. An interesting story here, because it was an American Methodist school, we're driving to this event and some of the kids are in the front seat of the truck that I'm in. The others are all in the back seats of the back of the truck in the cab. And someone pointed at something in the truck and said, "What's that thingamajig?" And I'm like, "Where in the world did you learn thingamajig?" And the student said, "The same place I learned whatchamacallit." And it was their American English teacher had taught these idioms to these kids in the most remote part of Botswana. It blew me away how these kids learned and what they learned and what they picked up. I was responsible for a science fair. We also took trips with the kids up into the game park. So those are my duties as a biology and a math teacher at Mound Secondary School. And then on weekends and so forth, I did this side job of buying handicrafts. When I finished my 3 years with Peace Corps, the Botswana Craft said, apply for this job to set up a purchasing system doing essentially what you've been doing, but you'll get a truck and you can go further back and do more and do much more to get income, mainly to women who were the handicraft makers mostly. So I signed up. My Peace Corps finished. I hadn't been hired. I didn't know if I was going to be hired. I roamed around the country a little bit and got a message from a very remote place, only radio. There was no cell phone back then, a radio message saying I was supposed to be in Geneva tomorrow. And so it took me a week to get to Geneva. And essentially being told in Geneva that they really didn't want to hire me, but they'd had to, and that if I didn't do a good job, I'd never do a UN job again. Unbeknownst to me is the Botswana Craft Company, who was run by the government, had told the Minister of Finance, "We don't want the project unless you hire this one person. The other 4 jobs, you can hire anyone you want, but they have to hire Rick for this job. He's been doing it. He'll do it. He'll finish it." So I got hired and I did do it. The crafts are still going 50 years later now. My trainee that I trained to do the purchasing system eventually became the Minister of Finance about 30 years later. He got sent off to university to get his economics and degree and came back and became Minister of Finance. But he started with me at Botswana Craft Marketing. And so, and the impacts, I know she's gone back to Namibia and I've gone back to Botswana. And I want to mention the diamonds again, because Botswana was a protectorate. The British had never, ever looked at what was in this desert of the Kalahari Desert. And right around independence, minerals beginning discovered. Gold, mostly copper and nickel, but then a diamond pipe was discovered. And because of the diamond mines, the government had made a law when the Constitution was written that 51% of all mineral rights belong to the federal government. So any income coming off diamonds helped the country build schools, helped the country build hospitals. When I lived in the country, there were only 10 senior secondary schools. When I went back 8 years later, there were 100 secondary schools. In 8 years, the diamonds have been a big benefit to Botswana, and they are the largest diamond producer in the world now. And they are not blood diamonds. They're factories, and and yeah, yes, it's a whole legal diamond operation in Botswana. Anyway, it's still going on. I've gone back 20 years later and discovered children of women that I used to buy handicrafts from who now run shops selling handicrafts. And so one of the most beneficial things besides the internet and Facebook has been going back and seeing how things have progressed, what my students are doing and where they're working and so forth. Yeah, it's my second, I'm going to go on to my second one. My second one was in Grenada. It is Grenada, not Grenada, but Grenada in the Caribbean. It's a small country in southern Caribbean, almost next to Venezuela. Trinidad and Tobago are nearby, but it's very south, one of the most southerly islands of the Caribbean. It's a small island. It's called the Spice Island. And St. George's is its capital, and I worked at the teacher training college. It's a Spice Island. It's a tourist destination, beautiful Grandon's Beach. And on Grandon's Beach is a very famous medical school, which is an American-run medical school in the Caribbean because there aren't enough medical schools in the US, but it's also the reason we invaded. And shortly after the leader, Maurice Bishop, was killed because we thought the medical school students were in jeopardy. An amazing leader. I 100% supported him. He made my job so much easier compared to the dictator that was in prior to him. But he had too close of connections to Cuba, and the US didn't really support him. And once his hardliners, he was beginning to make, anyway, I'm getting into history of all of these countries because it's what you learn when you go to all of them, and their history plays such a big role in the people's lives. I'm not going to say anything more about the revolution other than it's one of the reasons I had to leave a year early, and my father was also ill, which was another reason why I needed to leave early to go back to family. Where did Peace Corps take me? Oh my God. Ever since Peace Corps, I've done nothing but hop around the world, including the US, with stints in Colorado and a long stint here in Hawaii. I've been in Hawaii for 30 years. 10 of that, I was gone though for overseas again, because I got the bug a second time and went back overseas. But I started out in American Samoa for 11 years. I was in DC for a year, working with the Department of Education. I was in the Hawaii U.S. Pacific, which includes the Federated States of Micronesia, Koshrai, Truk, Chuk, Pohnpei, Guam, Marianas Islands, American Samoa. I worked on a regional project for a year, and then I moved over to the Big Island and taught at a private school here on the Big Island. I left that after 13 years and decided to go back overseas. An administrator and I had a difference of opinion on a sabbatical, and I took a sabbatical whether he wanted me to or not. And I went to Bangladesh for 4 years, and it was a most wonderful experience. It was exactly like Peace Corps again. It was really hard, really poor country, and I had to be so adaptable to be able to just adjust to all of the things that were going on around me. But without the Peace Corps experience, I'm not sure I would have done as well adapting to life in Bangladesh. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. From Bangladesh, I went to India, to Germany, Nepal, Lebanon, back to Hawaii. I've been doing summer STEM camps in China. So my 50 years of teaching, for those of you that end up being teachers, Peace Corps may be one of the best first jobs you could get as a teacher anywhere in the world. And it'll teach you to teach better in America and the US than you would if you didn't have that experience. And it led me to all kinds of jobs and all kinds of connections. And again, my two insights, and they're really similar to the previous speakers as well. People everywhere are just amazing, and the friendships I've made. It's been 50 years. My students from 50 years ago set up a WhatsApp group and are communicating now in WhatsApp with past teachers that I worked with, me, with themselves, and learning where people are, talking about illnesses and kids and grandkids. And it's amazing. I just had a birthday, and I had birthday wishes from people from like 50 different places in the world, with colleagues that I've worked with, students I've taught, and people everywhere are amazing. And it's, I think, one of the people-to-people contact of Peace Corps, and that concept is one of the best things the US can do overseas, is that people-to-people contact. The other thing I've learned is just to understand how the histories of each of these countries have played, and their families make a major role in determining what life is like for people. And that's true here in the US as well. The histories of families and the history of our own country, it plays a major role in determining what life is going to be like for so many people. And understanding that helps you to help others move along to different places. And I can't stress enough how those two things have impacted me in my 50 years of working. Again, friendships, again, that apps group, the birthday wishes. I've got tech skills I would never have had if I hadn't been with Peace Corps and worked overseas. Travel, medical skills that I would never have had. Professional improvement. My second language is Setswana from Botswana. I learned it particularly during the half-day handicraft job. I still think I only have about a kindergarten level. But the multicultural and difference of people and the beauty of that is something that's the adaptability and less fear. I can't tell you how many times, actually the two times I've been most fear of anything was one in Chicago when I was applying to go to Botswana. And the guy, I said, can I go out and walk around? Because I need to decide if I'm going to do something. And he said, I wouldn't step out the front of the door without a taxi waiting for me. So I didn't go out of that hotel then. And then the other one was in Germany on a soccer day. Don't go anywhere in a town that is having a soccer game. I've never seen so many policemen and riot gear in my entire life, except Germany but I mean, I was in a revolution, and one person got shot in the revolution. It was a quiet revolution, and it was, yeah, it just, the things we fear are not as big to overcome as you think they are. And acceptance of what you can and cannot change. And I've overrun my time, so I'm going to stop here, I think, and go to the question session when it's ready.
My goodness, thank you. I have a feeling that you could probably talk for 50 years about your experiences. They're unbelievable how many places you've been and how many seeds you've planted and how many lives you've touched. And once you decided to leave Kansas, boy, you really left. Incredible. Oh, maybe we'll have all of you come back for a part 2, because I have a feeling that we're barely scratching the surface today of all these wonderful experiences. Thank you so much. So without further ado, in the time that remains, I would like to open it up to our audience for questions and answers. So please go right ahead.
I just would like to say something. I just want to thank the presenters. It was so interesting, and I could really relate to it myself personally, because I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer also. I was in Ecuador starting in 1973, and then in Tunisia in 75 to 77. So I had a great experience too. I can just echo everything that they said. It started me on my career. I had no experience. I just had a BA, and I had several minor jobs before the Peace Corps, but I had no training in anything basically. And but yeah, they hired me, and I had training in Puerto Rico. They give you fabulous training to learn the language. Now it's all in country, of course, but then it was in Puerto Rico, for Ecuador, and and yeah, I mean, I just love the people of both countries. You make lots of connections, learn a lot. I mean, for me, I learned so much about cultures, and basically it just motivated me through my whole life. And in Tunisia, they taught me, Peace Corps training taught me how to teach English as a second language within that 3 month period. They teach, at that time, they taught French because the people primarily spoke French. And then in addition, once you got to a certain level in French, you'd move on to Arabic. I'm sure now it's all in the native language. But in addition, they taught really current methods in how to teach English, and so that propelled me on my career, which for the rest of my life I pursued teaching English as a second language. And it enabled me to travel to many countries. It gave me that love of travel and learning about cultures. So I'm really appreciative for the experience. And, it is, I know, as you all said, it's a tough job, but you love it. And you learn a lot, and hopefully, I gave something back in the Peace Corps too. So I just wanted to add that, but your experiences were so fabulous. I mean, I was just so fascinated with them, and you guys did so much. Wow. You're really super volunteers. I just wanted to say that. Thanks again.
Thank you for that, Julia, for sharing your experience. They are super volunteers. My head is absolutely spinning. I feel like I haven't been anywhere. And I travel a lot, but when I look at the experience of our panelists, it's very humbling and very inspiring. Would anybody else like to ask another question or share their own experience?
This is just a kind of a funny, not funny, but unique experience that I had. Um, so when I was in Tunisia, the Peace Corps, and I also would like to add, the Peace Corps is very, very supportive of its volunteers. It is a hard job, but you get a lot of support. If you ever have a problem, you make great friends with the other volunteers, even if you live in many different remote sites. You still somehow make plans to get together and go on excursions, which, and so this one moment that I'm going to tell you about was, we were on a excursion through the desert in Tunisia on camels, so I can relate to Orion experience riding on camel. That was my first time riding on a camel, and I thought I'd be really cool, like Isadora Duncan or something. So I was wearing this Tunisian scarf around my head, and it was a very long scarf, and it was flying in the wind. And the camel was being led by a native guide, and anyway, suddenly the camel bucked up and it threw me onto the ground. Thank God I was young, so I didn't break anything. But the guide got very mad at the camel, but he shouldn't have, because he told me later that the red scarf, it bothered the camel. Somehow it flashed in his eyes. It sparked this moment. Well, that's kind of a, I don't know, funny, but anyway, unique experience I had. Anyway.
I'm glad you're
I wanted to mention a couple of things that I'm am I on mute, or no, I'm working. I think one of the things I keep going back to this fear thing and adaptability thing, but I can still vividly remember what my images of what I was going to in Botswana, which was Tarzan's Africa. And I was blown away when it wasn't. I can vividly remember we had training, we had language training and culture training. And in a very rural village, there no high rises or anything. It was a village, a Botswana village. And we came back after dark, no street lights. We were living with a family in a hut. We were not sure we were on the right path because we hadn't been there long enough. And we heard drums playing and we're like, oh God, we're going to run into something we shouldn't run into. And we were really sort of freaked out because we just didn't know what the drumming was about. We finally made our house safely. We were 2 volunteers staying with a family. We asked in the morning, what was all the drumming about? And they said, oh, the church is just getting ready for a wedding tomorrow. And this like, oh my God, why do my images of what the drumming meant all came from TV, well, at that time, TV and movies. And it totally changed how I go to a new country in terms of it's not what I think it's in my head. It's a totally different experience than what you think it's going to be. And again, the no running water, no electricity wasn't a bad adaptability. It was easy, but the culture, understanding the culture and feeling safe in that culture was a really hard thing. And the reverse, coming back to America, was really, really difficult. I had more I mean, when I went into a supermarket and saw 10 different kinds of lettuce, I was overwhelmed. I was just, I mean, to the point that I had to leave the store. I was just so overwhelmed because I got lettuce, or no, I got a head of cabbage every 3 months. That was when the truck came to do vegetables and fruits to this remote area. And I was overwhelmed with American consumption and culture when I came home. It seemed so consumer oriented, which it is, but I hadn't expected the culture shock as much as I experienced. You're going to experience more culture shock coming back to the US than you will going to wherever you end up going to.
Well, thank you so much. I guess we'll wrap it up then. I would love to invite all of you back for more because I feel like there's still so much more we could talk about. I am sure that everyone who has been tuning in today, all of our students, all of our folks at Leeward and around the UH system, and anybody who's going to be watching this on TV, I'm sure that they will be extremely interested in all of your stories. Each one is unique. And I really hope that they will explore the Peace Corps and other opportunities for volunteering and working abroad, and all of the wonderful rewards that they bring that give you a lifetime of memories and experiences to draw from. Before I sign off, so let me just repeat that this presentation today has been made possible thanks to the Global Studies program at Leeward Community College. We invite fascinating speakers like our guests today to join us for presentations which are intended to open your minds and inspire you to explore the world for yourselves. If you're interested in pursuing the Global Studies Academic Subject Certificate, please contact me, Suzette Scotti. My email is sdscotti, that's SCOTTI, at hawaii.edu, or Dr. Kareem Khan, whose email is khana at hawaii.edu. He is here with us today, and either of us would be very happy to walk you through the requirements and help you see how you can work towards that certificate. So thank you once again immensely to all of our speakers and to all of you for joining in, and we will see you again soon. Bye.